morning. I am State Representative Marlon Anderson from the 76th District. It was another week in the House, Basically, we heard Governor Kehoe's State of the State and his priorities, and we heard some good things and we heard some bad things. We heard a lot of bills in committee and everything, so we're working hard and we're going to fight for the Missourians. I'll open myself up for any questions.
What's good and what's bad in the state of the state?
What's good? He wants to fund education. However, we do have some priorities that we disagree on, and that's contentious, so we'll get that going with the foundation formula and things of that nature. Another thing is good is he's willing to work across the aisle and provide resources to things that we care about, such as daycare and education.
I know something. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, it's fine.
I know something that you're not a fan of is Representative Brad Criss legislation that would put a state-appointed board in charge of the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. Obviously, this bills change as they go through. Is there a model where if the board would be locally appointed? So, for example, if the unions picked a handful of people, if the Board of Aldermen picked someone versus just gubernatorial appointments, is that something that you see to be more amenable?
No, I basically despise this bill given the fact that we just voted on it in 2012 and we have not had local controls since we just received it in 2017. I believe Chief Tracy is doing an amazing job and our violent crimes are trending down. So I am not amenable to that. I did talk to the representative about an amendment where basically we would still have a commission. We'd have to pick like 10 individuals from the city, and the mayor would still have to be able to pick from those 10, and they was not amenable for that.
Where's a happy medium though? I mean that, you would have local folks that would be appointed. What's the happy medium?
I think the happy medium is this is one of the times where I'll say we're better off the way it is right now. Basically, Chief Tracy has been on the job for roughly 18 months, I believe he stated, and crime is down. The morale is coming up. So we can look at our counterparts on the western part of the state, Kansas City, and their crime is trending up also. So local control will not do anything for violent crime. We need to talk about the school system and things of that nature that's definitely affecting crime and our city.
What do you need? What would you like to see happen with education then?
I will hand that off to Representative Fogel.
Thank you. Representative Anderson mentioned briefly the governor's remarks related to education in the state of the state. House Democrats are disappointed that for the first time in a long time, the governor doesn't plan to fully fund the foundation formula. That's one of the most important things we do in this body is making sure every child has access to quality and free public education. And underfunding that by $300 million will leave devastating impacts for people back home. We are, of course, equally concerned about the $50 million being spent to educate children at private schools. That is something that's unprecedented in the state. Of course, we've had the tax credit program, but to directly divert funds to the tune of $50 million to schools who don't educate children with special needs, don't educate children who might happen to be gay, that's very concerning and something that this caucus will stand against.
Speaking of the income tax, we know that the governor eventually wants to get it down to zero. Is there any room, do you think, for it to go down any farther? Obviously, it can still go down to 4.5% after previous legislation, but is there a concern going forward about taking that piece out altogether?
If we are not fully funding our foundation formula, if we are only offering an investment of 1.5% to our institutions of higher education, I think this body should pause any conversation related to the cutting of taxes. House Democrats will be leading the conversation about how we make continued investments in this state, and we're not in a position right now to effectively or thoughtfully cut taxes.
What do you all think of efforts to exempt some businesses from participating in the measures from Prop A, the minimum wage and paid sick leave?
Sure. House Democrats, as always, respect the will of the voter. That was made very clear in House District 135, where I represent, and then across the state, that voters wanted those provisions, and House Democrats will stand against any effort to change that.
Speaker Patterson, just before you all, we spoke on Senate Bill 72, which is the anti-immigration bill, or tackling illegal immigration, allowing for bounties for people who report people who they think are here without legal status, as well as life imprisonment for those who were caught. Patterson feels like there's not really an appetite for that in the House. Kind of reactions to the fact that that's the Speaker's attitude, and just opinions on that, Bill.
I will pass that to Representative Washmore.
Yeah, I would agree. There's no appetite on the Democratic caucus side. We see this for what it is. It is fear-mongering, and it is definitely a very bold step towards fascism. And we don't want any of our immigrants feeling unsafe in Missouri. As a representative, my district is mostly refugees. It's Bosnians, it's Afghani families. Any talk of, rounding up and getting your papers, especially during the same week as Holocaust Remembrance, is incredibly disrespectful and honestly should terrify anyone who calls himself a patriot.
Have you heard from any of your constituents on this bill?
I have been in talks with my superintendents about, once we've been hearing about ICE raids, we have been, I've been working to make sure that my people are protected. Of course, with the federal freeze of funds in St. Louis, the International Institute is now completely devoid of resources that they regularly provide to the refugees' families that, keep in mind, our government brought here to keep them safe because they helped us in our wars. So it's incredibly disappointing, and I would love to see a reversal of this language and a welcome embrace of those that we have actually brought here ourselves.
Not with the refugees, but with other minority population in your neck of the woods. Have you heard of any attendance enrollment impacts over the last couple of weeks?
I have not. I have not heard of any enrollment issues on my side.
Has ICE actually been in the schools, or are you talking about a preemptive?
We're talking preemptively. Yeah.
Can I ask about the education formula? That was something that in the State of the State that the governor talked about changing. I'd just like to get your comment as far as what you want to see happen, so that places like St. Louis, especially where there's been arguments that there is not equitable funding, and some of that is probably property taxes, but what changes would you like to see so that there is equitable funding?
I think, for us as House Democrats, it's really important if we open up the foundation formula that we are doing so with the intent to make more investments in our children, not less. I think it was clear from the governor's remarks and the underfunding of $300 million this year in the foundation formula that his intention would be to spend less, not more, per pupil. And that is something that House Democrats every year, we're at the table trying to figure out how to pay our teachers more, how to get more resources back home, how to build out wraparound services to children learning in our schools. If you open up the foundation formula, if we tie it to performance incentives, House Democrats have a real concern about what that would look like. We want to make sure that all schools have the resources that they need to educate our children.